Hello. Today we find ourselves in Proverbs chapter number 5, and we're going to look at the opening verses, verses 1, 2, and 3. What you're going to notice is that the opening two verses give an introduction. There are four subjects that are mentioned: wisdom, understanding, discretion, and knowledge. And with each of those subjects, there are verbs that are given with them. Solomon says, attend to the wisdom. Bow thine ear to understanding. When you think about bowing the ear to understanding, you can almost imagine somebody leaning in a little bit so that they could hear all the more clearly. And I suppose it would also have the sense of humbling yourself. That's bow thine ear to understanding. Verse 2 talks about discretion, and he says, regard discretion. Knowledge, that thy lips may keep knowledge. And pretty much the next verses that follow, about 19 of them, verses 13 through 21, begin to talk about the strange woman and give all kind of instruction concerning her. Now it seems when you look at the chapter as a whole that the strange woman could be anyone other than your spouse. Ideally, this is a man looking at the chapter and reading and understanding that the strange woman is somebody other than his wife. But I believe application is also there for the woman, for the wife, as in there being a strange man, anyone other than your husband. So it has that sense. When you look in verse number 20, it says, why wilt thou, my son, be ravished with a strange woman and embrace the bosom of a stranger? It's almost as though the father talking to the young man who has a wife saying, don't allow yourself to be mixed up with another woman. It talks about drinking cisterns out of thine own well, the husband being with his own wife. But in the context, there's also caution that you just need to stay away from an immoral person, whether it's a strange woman or a strange man. They're lascivious, or they just have there seems to be immorality and ungodliness, wickedness there. It's a caution and a warning against getting too close and getting burned by the fire that's there. And he's saying in the chapter, just stay far away. I would have you to notice in verse 1, as we're looking at these three opening verses very quickly, it says, my son, attend unto my wisdom, and bow thine ear to my understanding. And verse 2 says that thou mayest regard discretion, and that thy lips may keep knowledge. Those are the four subjects and the four verbs. And what is striking there is you can almost see a father talking to his son, a young man. And I don't know how much of that goes on in our day. I think a lot of dads teach their boys maybe how to hit a baseball for Little League, maybe how to throw a football, how to cut grass, how to do different things like that. But could you imagine what our churches would be like if moms and dads sat down with their sons and their daughters and explained to them the warnings, the reproofs, the encouragements about the opposite sex, how to not get mixed up with a strange man, a wicked man, or a strange woman, an immoral, ungodly woman. And as I've indicated, as you go through all the verses in this particular chapter, there's warning in verse after verse. He speaks in verse 3 about her lips. In verse 4, he warns about her conclusion or her end. In verse 5, he talks about her feet. In verse 6, her ways. And on and on. So you could break down the chapter and studying it in that fashion. But we'll just look at verse number 3, what the father was telling this young man, his son. He tells him in verse number 3, for the lips of a strange woman drop as an honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil. Do you think it's an accident that God starts right there in verse number 3 by talking about the communication, her mouth, the words that she says? It's not a coincidence, nor is it an accident. God says this is where the trouble starts. It's in the conversation, the things that are being said. So he starts right there with the warning and the reproof. Beware of the things that are being said. because the strange woman is going to try to wear you down, and will wear you down and feed your ego, will compliment you, and give you the attention you feel that you deserve. You can see this happen a lot in marriages, whether it's a man or a woman. A woman begins getting inordinate affection or attention from some other man, a strange man that is not her husband. Or the husband is getting attention that he feels he deserves to be getting from his wife. And it begins to feed his ego, or it begins to feed the wife's ego and meet some emotional need that she has. So God starts right there in verse number 3. Don't even listen to the speech. And it's not only here in chapter 5, you see it in chapter 2, when it says, deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger, which flattereth with her words. In chapter 6, keep thee from the evil woman, from the flattery of the tongue of a strange woman. In chapter 7, in verse number 21, with her much fair speech, she caused him to yield. With the flattering of her lips, she forced him. So there's a lot of caution in Proverbs right here at the beginning. Beware of what is being said. Now we really need to get to the bottom of this. Let me give you the two admonitions, the two helpful hints, the takeaway here. Number 1, don't get involved in conversation with a potentially wicked person. Women, don't get involved in a conversation with somebody who's obviously a wicked man. Men, likewise, with a wicked woman. Don't get involved in conversation with a potentially wicked individual. Somebody that just seems immoral or ungodly, unwholesome. Certainly you want to give them a tract, you want to invite them to church, you want to share your testimony with them, but don't allow yourself to start getting chummy or too comfortable. We always want to let our light shine and talk to people about the Lord. Number 2, keep your conversation wholesome. Always keep it above board, always keep it wholesome. We're going to give an account for the things that we say. We're going to give that account to the Lord. So one of the rules of thumb that will help us here is that we always keep our conversation wholesome. Don't let it start being flattery to where our ego is being stroked and we're starting to feel good and like this person is validating us. That is what our spouse should be doing. And maybe our spouse doesn't do that, but that doesn't mean we should allow somebody else to be filling that need, because that is going to lead to a whole lot of heartache. And that's what the rest of chapter 5 is talking about. That's it for now. We've really gone longer than we needed to. But that's chapter 5 of Proverbs, verses 1, 2, and 3. God bless you.